Just on that front, on the written side of things, I think we touched about this last time we spoke, in that there is evidence or scientific evidence that writing things out for whatever reason, whether it's the fact that you're moving your hand, it's wired to your brain in a certain way from a young age, that it sticks in your brain and you're more likely to have it top of mind kind of X days number out from the time you wrote it down. Should we be writing our goals down every day? Should we be sticking them on Post-it notes around the house? How do we keep our goals, our targets, our habits top of mind? Because again, it's one thing to listen to this show and Barry's listening and he goes, Jesus, friggin', that was amazing. I love this. Dwayne's a legend. I'm going to do this. And then, he writes a goal down and forgets to action on it kind of like 6 months later. How do we keep all this top of mind so that we just carry on doing it and it becomes a non-option to quit?
Okay, so what you just talked about there, they say neurons that fire together wire together. And the more you fire these neurons, the better off they're going to be wired. So there's a few ways you can do this. We know that just verbally doing it or saying it yourself doesn't work. We know that if you start to write it down, that works a little bit better. If you write it down and look at it every day, that's a little bit better again. If you write it down every single day, that's the best there is. So you almost got to pick your octane. Which one do you want to do? I don't write down my goals every day. I do look at them every day and do work on them every day. And I have a day planner where certain goals will get processed. But I'm definitely in the category of I have my goals written. I look at them daily. I rewrite the stuff that's important in my plans because, again, neurons that fire together, wire together. And I think there's one more element there, and I'm going to get a little woo-woo here because I like the woo-woo. I could go through probably, in the office you talked about that I just bought is one of them, 10 different situations in my life now where I start to emotionally, with repetition, give energy to a goal. And that is the key. The goal must be emotional. If the goal's not emotional, it won't resonate with you or even other people that might be able to help you. In some way, somehow, which I cannot explain logically, somebody in a completely unrelated area, often people I don't even know, I'll get a call or a text or an email or somebody will send me something, and it's exactly almost that goal handed to me on a plate. So call it consciousness, call it the internet, where we're all somehow connected some way, somehow. We've all had some experiences with that in some way in our life. There is an element to goal setting. I completely believe that the more you reinforce it emotionally, the more you charge this thing, and it's going to give you what you want for good or for bad. So be careful what kind of goals you set. I just don't think it's our own actions all the time. It's definitely not left brain activity. It's a big topic for me. There's a lot of dynamics here I've experienced the last 2 or 3 decades of my life, some of which I truthfully can't even explain, that it just works. Commit to it because it works. And it's been written about for a few thousand years, the power of word, the power of language, the power of knowing what you want. So, it's for some reason, well, it seems to be the way it is.
And I believe what you're saying. I don't necessarily think there's a woo-woo element to it. I think a lot of it just comes down to your subconscious and pattern recognition. Again, there's evidence on this and studies on this with pessimists and optimists. Pessimists will, in one experiment, they put a £5 note or $5 note on the floor, and pessimists would just walk past it. They wouldn't see it because they are thinking in their subconscious, oh, that's someone else's money. They're going to pick it up in a second. An optimist picks it up and goes, free money. Congratulations to me.
That thing in our brain has been studied. It's called an RAS, reticular activating system.
Yep.
And it's like when you buy a new car, all of a sudden you notice that car on the road everywhere. Like they just showed up. Well, no, they were there all the time. So whatever you're interested in, absolutely you're right. Your brain will find a way to find it.
And so just my perspective, not to kind of belittle anything you're saying, because obviously we all have our beliefs, but I believe the same thing as what you're saying of what you think about you become. But I believe it's due to just the fact that we're just software running on multiple platforms within our brain. With that, Dwayne, I've got one final question. I asked you this last time you came on the show, so I'm going to ask you again. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self and give them some advice to help them become better at selling, there's nothing to do with goal setting, because we've dove deep into that in this episode. What would that one piece of advice be?
I often say that people compete because I either love to win or hate to lose. I'm both. I'm much more a person that hates losing. So what I tend to do when I goal set, and it's important people that are listening to this to know which one you are. Do you love winning or hate losing? You've got a goal set in both areas. So you've got a goal set on what would be something that's unacceptable to you. That's a loss. And you got to keep moving your ideas of losses up. So you keep moving up and up and up in terms of your expectations of yourself. But also, what's the potential top end? What would be the ultimate, most absurd win I could have? And you start going towards more of that. I was always goal setting on either one or the other. Things I want to avoid or things I want to gain. The best goal setting, I call it a box goal. What's your upside you're after? and what's the downside, the worst downside you're willing to tolerate. And then you have to move them both up all the time, which I now do with my goal setting. So I'm always trying to avoid dropping below this level, and I'm also seeking a higher high. I wish I knew that psychology. That only came across my screen here, my brain, whatever you want to call it, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And it's a big change in how you see things.
That's a fascinating question to ask. I've never thought about this before. If I lose at something, I'm happy to go. You know, it is what it is. I put the effort in, but I'm driven to win. I don't see, and obviously this is subjective depending on what you're after.
Let me ask you this question. What fires up your nervous system more right now? The idea of getting $100,000 or pounds or whatever it is, or euro, or the idea of losing $100,000, pounds, or euro? Which one of those actually upsets you or excites you more, getting it or losing it?
So instinctively, I feel if I was to lose it, I'd just get it back. I'd be back at even. It wouldn't bother me. I've got the chops to do that pretty quickly. But it becomes a competition to get the additional 100,000, or however we're framing it up. So that would be motivating for me more so than the risk of losing it, if that makes sense.
Yep. And a lot of people would answer that totally opposite.
Yeah, and I've never thought about it like that way before either.
Yeah, they go, yeah, getting 100 grand would be great, but man, if I lost 100 grand, I'd freaking shoot myself. Well, you know that person now, they hate to lose, so they got to keep raising their bar of what they think a loss is, or go stagnate.
Yeah, I know I do, and we'll wrap up in a second, but I know I do on this. This is fascinating. This is perhaps a topic for another time, but I do have, and I've read other people talk about this as well, a baseline layer, both financially and if I'm feeling tired, or if I'm feeling tired, I need to take some time off of X amount of cash in the bank, and I'm like, okay, right, shit, we need to double down here, and I don't know what my top end is. I don't feel like I've ever got to the point where I've gone, okay, I can take the foot off the gas. I'm sure there is an end point, and it might be in the kind of tens of millions, which I'm not going to achieve within the next kind of few years or so. And maybe there is a point where I can take the foot off the gas, but flipping that on its head slightly, I do know that there is a bottom point where I'm like, okay, this is not acceptable. And I don't know a better way to describe it than that, but I guess that ties into it as well.
It does. And funny, I mean, we can talk about this forever. Any extra cash that I have, I move in an account in a bank that I can't get to or go to. So my account always looks low. So I know I've got more sitting someplace else, but it drives me to keep filling that up. And I get to a certain point and I move it out. And I do the same thing with properties. I need a certain amount of debt to keep myself motivated, because I am a person that primarily hates to lose. So I've learned to hack that game a little bit. So I'm always a little uncomfortable, because I always think, oh, geez, that's not acceptable. That keeps me going. Somebody else might love watching the dollars, the zeros in the bank account, and, the equity in the properties. I grow it through the other side.
Makes
as long as you move
sense.
it ahead. Yeah.
For sure. Well, with that, because we've covered a lot of ground in this one, Dwayne, tell us about the books, the online training, and where we can find out more about you as well, sir.
Okay, so I've got the blue book, Unstoppable Selling. It's on Amazon or online through several different resources. The red book, Unstoppable Attitude, which is like your own private therapist. And the green book, Unstoppable Money. It's great to be making money, but it's what you do with it. So go online, buy one in books. That would be great. Merino TV is my online learning portal. It's a multi-million-dollar virtual training platform, over 3,000 videos to help sales professionals from all industries. You can find out about that through my website, which is DUANE, Dwayne Marino, MARINO.com. Will, I really